Once again, I'd like to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Hi everyone, and Happy New Year. I hope you've had a fantastic holiday season. I know I did, and are ready for an amazing 2025. In today's video, I want to take a moment to reflect on some of my favorite experiences from 2024. 2024 was a year full of adventure and some incredible moments out in nature. So I'll be sharing a selection of my favorite photographs from that year, including a few that I captured right at the very end that I didn't vlog that I think that you might find really interesting. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and let's take a look back at an unforgettable year of photography and exploration. All right, now I do think that I've probably chosen too many images to show you, and I actually have a lot more that I would have liked to have added, but obviously we're just going to run out of time here. But if you do enjoy this video, let me know, and I'll post the second half straight after this one if we do run out of time. So the first location was Spain, northern Spain, and actually I forgot I was there early this past year. I thought it was in 2023, but it was 2024. I was there teaching a workshop with my good friend Alistair Ben. Now, the north coast of Spain is absolutely fantastic for landscape photography, and I've been there a couple of times now, and it just blows me away every time I go there. The nice thing about the coastline is it's very rugged, and if you go there in the winter, there's often not that many people around. Now, this particular image I really liked because it kind of exemplifies what I'm looking for in the landscape, and that's to simplify things as much as I possibly can. That's one of my things that I like to do, is find complex scenes and then try to simplify them. And if they work, now and then they do work, I'm really quite satisfied. Now, in terms of processing, you can see that this is quite blue. So in the final image, I actually warmed it up. And when I show these raw files, I'm showing you the whole file. And what I can do is I can show you how I originally composed this shot, as in what the format was or the aspect ratio. So for this particular image, it was, I believe it was 65 by 24. So we'll go to as shot. And yes, as you can see, that's the pano that I shot it at. And the reason why I chose pano is because I found, although I was able to separate all of these rocks and include a nice reflection in the center here, I did find that this section here was a little bit empty. As much as I like this lovely sand, I found it just a bit empty. It would have been nice if there was another rock there. If there was another rock there, then that probably would have worked. The only part that bugs me about this scene is this section over here. You can see that we have the rocks are kind of merging into one another. So this is the original raw file, and here's the final image here. And you can see what I've done is I've really tried to bring out the greens. I've warmed it up. I've darkened the sky ever so slightly and warmed the sky up in the background as well. So overall, I really enjoy this photograph. I think it turned out great. Now, my second shot from Spain is one that you may have seen before, these stacks. Often I'll use a case ND filter. In this instance, it was a 10-stop filter, so the exposure was very long. Let's see how long it was here. It was 50 seconds, so it's just under a minute. And the reason why I do that is because I often find, personally, when you have lots of little details in the ocean, like waves and such, it can be quite distracting. So I find when I use an ND filter, it just simplifies things ever so slightly. It has these sharp objects against a nice smooth background. Now again, when it comes to the format that I used, this wasn't the original format. This is just a raw file. I suspect it was also a pano. Yeah, see, it was a pano there. I think in the final image, I've actually widened it ever so slightly because I found that this was just a bit too tight. So there's the final image. And you can see I've tried to eliminate the distractions that were in the original frame. Like this island here, it's quite close to the edge. The sky doesn't really do anything for the final image either. There's other ways that you could crop this as well. I could have probably just brought this down to here. That works quite well as well. But I chose this format here. Also, I've warmed it up ever so slightly. Right. Then we went on to a trip to Antarctica. This is my third trip to Antarctica. Absolutely fantastic. The landscape is probably second to none. Everywhere you look, there's photographs, either wildlife or the landscape. Now, for this trip, I concentrated mostly on landscape, and I decided to do or work in mostly panos. So not every image, but most of the photographs that I took while I was down in Antarctica this time were panos. So obviously this foreground hasn't really been included on purpose. It doesn't really have any order to it. What I really loved was this cloud right in here. These clouds here didn't do anything for me for this composition, but it was just this cloud here. I figured that I could isolate this cloud, and also the slope here has a bit of light on it. You can see there, and also some light over here. So this is the raw file, and as you can see, I shot this as a pano, and the final image is pretty true to the original intent. But what I've done here is I've actually darkened some of the areas that were less important to me and brightened up the areas that were important. So I've brightened up this whole slope here and also the clouds in here. And the way that I do that, very simply, let's just turn that off for a sec. You can just go into the masks here, and you don't have to use Lightroom. You can use any of these new programs now. I'm sure they all have a similar effect. And you can either brush it in or use one of the predetermined radial gradient or color range or any of those. But what I would do is just paint in the area that I wanted to brighten. In this case, it's the cloud. And what you can do here is just start to brighten up the whites. Now, obviously, I've rushed this a bit, so the mask is not quite the way I want it, because you can see it's brightening up the edges here. But all I'm doing is brightening or emphasizing the brighter areas. So in this case, let's use the brush, and we'll just get rid of the areas where I've brightened on the edges here. I mean, this is a really quick and dirty way. Obviously, I'd spend more time, but very simple editing techniques. I don't use anything very complicated. And if you look at this slope here, you'll notice in the final image, I've also brightened that up as well to emphasize this whole face of this mountain. Okay, the next photograph is of a penguin that we saw on this slope opposite us. You can see there's lots of green in there. That's from the penguin's poop. There's lots of algae and things growing in these, they call them penguin highways. Supposedly some of these highways are hundreds of years old, where penguins continually use the same paths over and over each year. Now, I did do a bit of Photoshop work on the final image. You can see that this is a little bit gray, so I've brightened it up considerably, and I've also taken out the human footprints. So you can see in the original, we had all these human footprints, and I just got rid of those right here. I really enjoy this photograph. It really kind of emphasizes the loneliness of this little penguin hiking up this quite a big hill, actually, and they're nesting on top of the hill. Now these next series of photographs were ones that I took at the end of the cruise. Just as we were coming into port, there was some absolutely amazing light. It was probably the best light that we had on the whole trip. So I took a number of shots in this area. These are just a couple of the images. But again, if you have really great light, then you don't have to do that much to a photograph. Maybe brighten up a little area, darken a few areas, but very minimal work. So this is the original, and the final photograph is this one here. I've decided to go with more of a 16:9 format, and again, I've just brightened up those white areas or those light areas and given it a little bit more contrast, as you can see in here. And actually, I'm curious to see what my original format was. So let's see, as shot. I originally shot it as a pano, but I decided to go with something a bit taller. And same with this photograph here. This was on the same morning, looking at the same hills, just in slightly different light. Again, absolutely stunning conditions. And this was shot, I'm guessing, probably as a pano again. Let's see. Yeah. Pano is okay, but I really loved the textures in the bottom of the water here. So here's the final photograph here. It was very pink that morning, pink and very subtle hues. So I really enjoyed that. And that's one of the challenges in working in Photoshop or Lightroom, is trying to create those subtleties without overdoing them. As you can see in here, we've lost all that subtleness and all those colors in the original file. So I've just tried to bring those out as much as possible without overdoing it. Now on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have Patagonia. Nigel and the guys, we all went, when we finished the Antarctica trip, we went to Patagonia for a few days. And we had absolutely amazing light conditions. And I think this probably happens more often than not. And I think the reason being is that this is in the morning. If you go to the east of this location, it's more or less desert, flatlands. And I think that there's less cloud on that side. And as the sun comes up, you often have clouds over the mountains. Here are the mountains right on the edge of that prairie type land. And you often get these really amazing sunrises. The glow was just absolutely fantastic. So again, I haven't done an awful lot to this photograph. This is the original RAW file. And this is the finished image. And you can just see that I've tried to give it a bit more luminosity by brightening up the bright areas and adding a bit more contrast so it really glows. Thank you once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Are you ready to take your online presence to the next level? Meet Design Intelligence by Squarespace, a fusion of world-class design and AI technology that unlocks your creative potential like never before. Build a stunning, personalized website that's as unique as you are and stands out from the crowd. With Squarespace Payments, managing transactions is easier than ever. Get started in just a few clicks and let your customers pay their way, whether it's Apple Pay, Afterpay, or more. Need to invoice clients? Squarespace has you covered. Simplify your workflow and focus on growing your business. If you're interested in building an awesome website, why not head on over to squarespace.com and give it a try. And if you like what you find, use the code AdamGibbs for 10% off your first purchase. Now from there, I had a quick trip to Scotland in March. I was at the Birmingham Photography Show in the UK for a few days. And while I was there, I decided to go up to Scotland. I went up there with Paul Thompson, and as is usual with Scotland, the light and the weather can be very finicky, but we did manage to get a couple of days where we had some absolutely fantastic conditions. This was in the Torridon area, and I was trying to isolate these Scots pine, and then I noticed that there were some beautiful beams of light behind the pine in this distant mountains. So in this case, I've actually exposed for the brightest highlights, which are the light hitting the ocean here. So it's quite underexposed. The final image, I've taken a bit of artistic liberties in that I've really emphasized the beams. In this case, perhaps more than I should have, but I do like the final effect. It's believable. We have light hitting the ocean. So in the original, we have this beam of light coming down, and in the final image, we have this beam of light. And then we also have this beam of light over here, which I've emphasized quite a bit more than the original file. So I have taken artistic license, but as I said, if you like the effects and that's what you want to do, then why not go for it? The only probably giveaway with this one is that the tree in the foreground could probably be a bit darker. You'll notice that these are more or less silhouettes, but I've lightened this whole area, and in the process I've lightened up the bark as well. So perhaps I should darken that just to add the believability to this image. All right, guys, thank you ever so much for watching this week's video. I really appreciate it. It's been a couple of years since I put out a video of my favorites, so I thought it was about high time I did a new one. Before I leave you, I just want to mention, if you are interested in any of the photographs as an 11x14 print, I put up a special page on my website where you'll find all the information about the prints. I'm selling them for $39.99 plus shipping, which is a heck of a deal. And lastly, I have to mention this, my book, Land and Light, all the pre-sales have been sent out. So I am taking orders, and the orders are going out straight away. Thank you ever so much for those of you that have purchased a copy and left feedback. The feedback has just been absolutely incredible. Thank you ever so much. The book has been very well received, so I really appreciate that. So head on over to my website where you'll find information about the book, Land and Light. Hopefully next week we'll be outside. The weather hasn't been great lately, so that was one of the other reasons why I did a video inside this week, but hopefully next week. All right, till then, bye-bye.